So I wanted to welcome everyone to a kind of a special version of Leadership of Fools, a one-on-one version. One of the things we sort of discovered in season one was that we had the chance to speak about a lot of leadership conversations, and there's some amazing stories a lot of our experienced executives have to tell. And today I'm joined by Graham Plant. Graham.
How are you?
I'm really well. I'm really well. You and I have a bit of history. We used to do quite a lot of work together. But that was like, am I right in saying that's 5-6 years ago?
It'd be longer. That'd be more like 8-9 years ago.
Yeah.
I'd say. Yeah.
Now, at that time, you were kind of in a big corporate role, a big corporate job.
Yep.
And there's a lot of, over this next however long, we're going to share a lot more about the work we did and the work you've done. But I want to go straight to a kind of a key event in your life and maybe paint the picture for us. The year is 2015.
Mm-hmm.
The month is what?
April.
And tell us where you are and what you're doing.
I'm standing at the starting line of Marathon des Sables in the Sahara Desert, listening to AC/DC rock out Highway to Hell.
Right.
About to run across on a self-sufficient race for 6 days.
So you told me, in fact, I did know about that at the time. I didn't follow you closely at the time, but since catching up regularly, more recently, we've debriefed it a bit. Mm-hmm. And I just said, man, we have to get this on a podcast. We have to talk about this properly. So tell me more about that moment, how you were feeling just as you were embarking on the starting line.
It was a quite surreal moment, actually, because I'm standing at the starting line, and it had been 2 years in the making to get to that point. From signing up the charity that I was running to actually raise funds for Alzheimer's. And it's kind of surreal. It didn't feel real until I was finally there, and then it started. Highway to Hell kicked in. Right. I've got the pack all lined up. I'm there with a whole stack of other guys. And it's funny.
And do you have any sense what they were playing? Like was music a big part?
At the start they had the kick-off, yeah.
Right.
But it's funny because I'm sitting there thinking none of these people know Bon Scott, and I've got Japanese and Germans and all sorts of people from around the world, all trying to sing Highway to Hell.
Yes.
And at that time I sort of stopped and took a deep breath and looked and thought, I'm finally here. So
Yes.
It's like all that hard work got me to that point.
Yes.
It's like any endurance event, though. A lot of people say, is the event tough? So it's not as tough as preparing for it. So
right.
Getting to the start line is a big achievement. Actually, finishing it becomes almost not the easy part, but it's kind of the icing on the cake.
Okay, so we in a moment we're going to go back in time,
Mm-hmm.
almost probably that 2 years or maybe even a fraction back from there to kind of work out what led to this moment.
Yep.
But let's stay with painting this picture. This is a 6-day endurance event in the middle of the Sahara Desert.
Yep. Yeah, just outside a little place called Ouarzazate.
Right.
And it's totally self-sufficient. So you have to carry your food for the whole journey.
Yes.
Your cooking utensils, your clothing, your bedding, pretty much everything you need has to fit inside your backpack.
So you don't have necessarily an intact crew with you?
No.
Right.
No. There's some Berbers. Right. And they'll set up a tent at the end of the day. I use the term tent very loosely, like it's a black sheet held up by sticks on a
Are you serious?
on a rug,
right,
with no walls.
Right.
And
so where does food and stuff come from?
You have to carry it.
Right.
And cook it yourself.
So literally self-sufficient.
Yeah. So freeze-dried fruit, and you have to. All your food has to be measured out. So you have to have a certain amount of calories to take every day, and you can be audited on that.
Right.
And so the only thing they supply is with your water, which
right.
you pick up, and you have a rations card, which I've got here actually, but the rations card gets stamped and you pick up your water, and they also give you salt tablets, so to sustain you.
Right. And it's regarded as, if not the toughest, definitely one of the toughest running events in the world.
Yeah, and Patrick Bauer, who set it up, that's how he markets it, and it's certainly it can be a grueling event, or it is.
Well,
and,
it is. Yes.
It is a grueling event, and there's others now starting to come up like that, but they still get. There was like 1,350 or so runners
right.
the year I did it. A lot of them from France and the UK, and then there was probably about 25 to 30 Aussies and Kiwis.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's keep going.
Yep.
How many kilometres a day?
I think the first day was around 36.
Yes.
So, and all up, It sort of went on different days. So all up, it was over 250
Right.
over that journey.
Right.
And our biggest day, which was day 3 or 4, I think, was 91.7 Ks. So,
Oh my God. Oh,
so that was a long one.
I'm shaking my head.
We all call that the long day, which it really was.
The long day.
Yeah.
To state the obvious.
Yeah. And you had a long, each day has its cut-off periods. So the cut-off period you have to hit. So if the Berbers coming through with the camels catch you, then you're out. So you have to meet the cut-off times.
Right.
And you have to get to these checkpoints at certain periods to pick up your water. And then when you get to the camp at the end of the day, you pick up your Moroccan tea, your rations of water, and go back to your tent and start cooking. Go to bed.
And how many people would say be lost to the event in terms of, not make the cut-off?
I think every day there was dropouts.
Right.
Day 1, I think they dropped something like 6 to 10, and then the next day, by day 3 or 4, it was up to 60 or 70 people.
Yes.
So there is a fair amount, and it's injuries and sickness, because you think the Sahara and you think desert, so you think it'll just be like sand dunes. We had some what they call Sables, really high mountains, which were treacherous climbs. There was one story about a guy in a previous year got to the bottom of the mountain, looked up and said, "I'm out."
Right. He just said, that's not for me. That's too confronting.
Yeah, I remember climbing one particularly tough one,
Yeah.
and there was a French lady climbing with me. And we got to the top and she just broke down in tears.
Yes.
And one of the race event people were there and they said, what's wrong? And she said, I'm just so glad that's over.
Right.
It was like that sheer exhaustion of getting to that point.
Yes.
But that was, then you had to keep on going.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I was. I mean, in my head, I picture the Sahara Desert. I'm picturing the sand dunes. So you are definitely running in that, which...
Yep. Absolutely.
Again, for me, someone like me who's be lucky to get through 5Ks, like even running through on a beach is hard. So that just adds a layer of challenge.
Yeah, the dunes were hard, the sand was tough, and it's really fine, so it gets into everything. So blisters are a big problem.
Right.
But then there's sections of it where it's just rocks. So you're going through sections where it's really rocky, so it looks like the moon landscape. Yeah. And so you'll be running through that, and then there'll be steep hills, and then you'll have long, hard flats, like what you'd imagine salt flats to be like. And it was it's quite bizarre. You do these climbs, and then you get to a point, and you'd stop and look, and you're sitting up high this mountain, and you can see for hundreds of miles. As far as the eye can see, you can see rolling hills and sand dunes. And
does it help, like in terms of the psychology, like just be able to see a sense of where you're going?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right. It's sort of a pinch me moment where, and I actually remember running with a few guys and saying, you just have to stop and think where we are.
Yeah.
I remember when one of my mates, and we're talking about it, and he was kind of not playing down that it was a big deal. And I said, well, just work out how many people have actually done this race over 30 years, and if it's about 1,000, so that's 30,000 people or so.
Yes.
Some of them are mutual runners, so 30,000 out of a population of, what's the world population?
5 billion, 6 billion.
We're in a very small percentage of the entire population.
Yes.
So when you go, well, this is significant.
Yes.
But you do lose sight of that because what you're focused on is the job in front of you.
Yeah.
So if you tend to lose...
Literally one step at a time.
Yeah. I remember talking to one of the guys, Matt, he was... when we were talking about that big hill, I said, did you look up it and see how high it was? He said, no. I just kept looking at the step in front of me and kept going because he knew if he looked up, he sort of felt, he said, that would be tough. Yeah. So it was easy just to know, get one foot in front and you get there.
Did you run in the dark?
Yeah, on the long day. The long day was a 36-hour cut-off, so it had a long time. So some people slept out in the desert overnight.
Right. 36 hours is the cut-off?
Yeah, to get through that because it is a tough day. And it was really windy.
So it's not really a day, it's a day and a half.
Well, I came in at about 21 hours, so I didn't stop. I stopped at the checkpoints and nutrition and hydration. But most people decided it was better to get through because then you had the rest of that 36-hour period to recover before the next day, which was a marathon.
Yes.
So the whole idea for me was get there and then I've got as much time to recover.
Recovery time.
Which other people thought, no, I'm going to camp out in the desert. So they'd stop at one of the checkpoints.
Yes.
Hop under a tent, pull up the sleeping bag and have a kip for a few hours and then take off and do the rest.
So is there any moment in these 6 days that you thought you might not make it?
I had a few. I got sick on the day before the long day. I got sort of diarrhea, and it's hard to keep hygiene there because you can't wash or anything. And so there's all that sort of stuff. And the latrines were substandard, to say the best. I won't go into that. But at that point, I ended up being in the triage, if you like, getting salt and water and trying to get rehydrated.
Yes.
And the feet were getting pretty much chopped up with blisters and that type of thing. So, yeah, a few times there you thought, geez, am I going to get through this?
Yeah.
And self-doubt creeps in, especially when you're totally fatigued.
Yes.
And you're sore.
Yes.
But then you find the next day you get up and you get rolling and it hurts for a while. Then once the body gets in motion, and you got a lot of camaraderie in there too with the other runners.
Can you tell me more about that? Because at some level, again, the desert invokes a sense of isolation, but you're doing this with a number of other runners.
Yeah.
What's the relationship with those other runners?
Yeah, lots of good conversations with people, and there was even people from other countries.
Yes.
But you're all in it together, so you've all got experiences to share.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting when I looked at our tent. Like we had in the Berber tent, we have 8, and you was basically sleeping shoulder to shoulder because you're just all lined up like that.
Okay. Yep.
So yeah, you get pretty cozy.
Yes.
But through that period, not a lot of us actually spent a lot of time talking about what we did outside the event.
Right.
Because all we were really focused on was how you're tracking, where you're at, what's on tomorrow, sharing ideas, tips, and that type of thing. And
So the
support.
conversation remained about the task at hand.
Primarily, yeah. It all got down to what are you doing, how are you doing this, how heavy is your pack, how heavy is my pack, how are your feet. So you didn't spend a lot of time, and it's only afterwards that you started to have a conversation when the event was over. You find out all these interesting backstories about people.
At some level, that kind of makes sense to me because I almost wonder if you are engaged in what you do for a living, your family, you kind of start to lose sight.
Yeah.
You'd actually be confronted by the impossibility of what you're just doing and whether it's really worth it.
And it is so foreign.
Right.
Like, it was funny, I found that the rest of the world just drifted away to being on my focus was there. So we had one little bit of access to the outside world where we could send emails.
Yes.
One email to an address, and that would get the message out to everybody else.
Right.
500 words on substandard equipment. And we were getting emails from the outside world that were sent to a central hub.
Yes.
And they would come through us and drip fed at night time.
Yeah.
So you're kind of disconnected.
About 20 minutes ago, you showed me what's it called, the pamphlet or
That's
booklet?
our road book. Yeah, if
Our
you
road
like
book?
it. That's when we get on the bus.
Yeah.
And they're taking us out there. They say, here's where you're going. So when you sign up, you don't actually know what the route looks like.
Yeah. Right.
And we didn't even know how long the long day was. We just knew there was one.
Right.
And then we get the book and we start reading through it. So you're ploughing through it, and then you
So
start.
it's kind of happening in the moment. Like you're doing that planning on
right
arrival.
there. Pretty much, everyone's frantically reading it on the bus.
One of the things I was struck by, I noticed it, and one of the pages you open up, you actually have the words from emails from friends, colleagues, family, and very supportive words.
Yeah.
What role did that play?
It was quite incredible. First of all, you get a sense that everyone's with you and they're watching.
Yeah.
So you know you can't screw up then. But the other side of it is, but those motivating messages, I think everyone would say they're quite emotional because you sort of get back and you're spent and you're tired and your feet hurt and you're thinking, God, I've got another day to get through. Then you start reading these messages of encouragement and support, and it just really inspires you. And sometimes they're coming from people you don't expect.
Yeah.
And I got one message from the guy who wore my number the year before.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And so I did it for the guy the following year after me. And you write it to their number.
What a wonderful tradition.
And I just got that. And it was basically, he knew when I was going to get it. And he said, you're coming up the long day. It's going to be tough, but you've got it. This is what you need to do. Keep focused. So you've kind of, it's nice to know that this person I don't even know has taken time out to send that little inspiration
message. So when it's happening
message.
each year since, because we're talking 2015, so another 3 years have gone by.
Yep.
Like,
I'll leave it to the next one. It's almost like you pay it on.
Yeah, you
The
paid
next
it on once.
Yeah.
But would you still picture the people doing?
Yeah.
Like
I
it comes flooding back.
Oh yeah, I watched the race was on it was on one of the sports channels on Foxtel the other day. I saw it, so I sat down and watched it, and just all came back.
Yeah, wow.
And I was sitting there looking at it, and I could recognise the landscape.
Yes.
I knew where they were.
Yes.
And listening to the stories and how they were talking about it, it was quite. You're back there instantly.
So the shared experience, when you say people talking about the stories and you can relate to them, what's the kind of shared experience? And it may even be hard to put into words, but you know, how would you co-runners put that into words?
Yeah, it's funny. It's even outside this event, any endurance event that I've run in, you end up talking to people for a long time. And I did one Port Douglas, where I ran with the guy for the best part of 7 or 8 hours. And so you talk about a lot of stuff.
Yes.
But on this one, I think it was really focused. I ran with Rodney for a while, and he was doing a fundraising for it was for autism.
Yeah.
And so we got talking about what was driving him to do that, and then I was sharing my story, and we sort of shared that part together, and we looked after each other along the way. So we ran together probably 4 or 5 hours on the long day.
Right.
And it's hard too, because sometimes you have to keep going. You have to run your own race.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
someone says, I can't keep going at this pace.
Yes.
You have to make the call, do I hold back and go with them, or do I go on my own? And it's this balancing act of, are you sure you're okay? Do you mind if I leave? And
Right.
But it's...
And that's sort of negotiated, like you do negotiate.
Yeah, you kind of feel like you want to make sure you're helping your mates out.
Yeah.
And you don't want to leave people
Yes.
in a bad way. And there's a real camaraderie. There is an element too that you're not allowed to share food and you're not allowed to do things like that.
You're right.
But you have to look after everyone's well-being.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But it was... I remember sitting in the triage waiting to get in to see what they call the doctors, doc trotters, because they're fixing up your feet.
Yes.
And I was sitting with a Japanese girl who was in a whole lot of world of pain.
Yes.
And she said, I'm not sure I can make it. And then she just tells me she's done an Ironman. She's got another one planned. I said, I think you'll be fine.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm talking to her about Australia, and then she's telling me about what she's doing and the contingencies there.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's completely bizarre conversation. I'm in the middle of the Sahara Desert talking to a 24-year-old Japanese girl.
Do you think you could do this? I mean, you need the officials and you need probably medical people, but could you do this kind of as a solo event? And what I mean by that is, does it need that camaraderie of other runners?
I think it helps. It certainly helps on the dark moments, but on the long day, I spent probably best part of 10 hours pretty much alone.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was probably the hardest part, and that was primarily, there's a whole host of things that happened made it harder, but my phone battery had gone flat, my Garmin had gone flat, so I had no sense. My watch, my Garmin watch.
Yeah.
So I had no sense of time.
Yeah.
And I had no sense of distance. So all I knew that was I had to get to the next checkpoint. I knew roughly how far it was.
Yes.
But I'd be running for an hour. I had no idea if I'd gone 5Ks, 10Ks, 3Ks.
And where does your mind go?
You have some dark moments, and I think everybody does through those lower moments when you're really fatigued. But then it's just a matter of, it becomes a little bit sort of mantric. You just keep focusing. Your mind wanders a lot, especially as you get tired, and you can hallucinate a little bit and start to get a bit... I got a bit wobbly as I was getting into sort of 18 odd hours or so.
Yeah. And again, understandably so.
Yeah, but I think you're so focused on the end that you become really sort of singly focused of what you have to do.
Yeah.
And if you can tap into people who are with you, that's fine, but sometimes there'll be no one.
Yeah.
And so you just have to...
you can't afford to rely on that.
You have to tap into your own resolve.
Yes.
And move in. And when you do these things, there could be 20 Ks between checkpoints.
Yes.
So if you fall apart halfway, there's no one there anyway.
Yeah.
You can press the transponder and they'll come and get you, but you're out.
Yeah. Yeah. So pressing
that's like a last
is
resort.
the last thing you're going to do.
Yeah, the last resort.
Yeah. Sorry. In a moment. Sorry about that. We'll cut that part out. Yeah. In a moment, I do want to revisit the catalyst for this, the drive, the journey, whether it goes 2, 3 years, 4 years back. But please tell us about the crossing the finish line moment.
Yeah, it was that was a point where all the pain disappeared.
Is that that's the first sensation?
Yeah, as soon as I could see the finish line, you become quite emotional. So at that point, I was sort of talking to myself, but there was a bit of fist pumping to myself that I'd made it.
Yeah.
And then it was a combination of relief and exaltation at the same time that you'd crossed the line.
Yes.
And that was probably the key part. So it's hard to describe. It's the best thing about getting to the finish line is always the most rewarding experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what plays out for the next, 12, 24 hours, 48 hours?
It's a lot of reflection, I think, and also to revisiting what you've been through.
Okay.
And a lot of as you start to explain it to, explain to my wife, and she's asking, well, what was it like and what did you do? So you're revisiting it all over again.
Yes.
And then you sit down and you have that first cold beer and a feed and you're talking to your mates, you start sharing all those experiences again.
Yes.
So you live it quite a few times.
Yes.
But yeah, it was like this massive load has been lifted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's 3 people in the studio at the moment, myself and you and our producer Paul, and you said something crazy. I thought it was crazy, at least, that you said you're contemplating doing it again, or at least it's somewhere in the back of your head.
Yeah, I think I would, and I think it'd be nice to do it again, knowing what was ahead,
Okay.
and being able to probably take in some more of that experience.
Yes.
Because sometimes in that period where you just focused on the event, you become really focused and you forget to take in everything else.
Yes.
So I think it'd be good to do it again and sort of going it without that fear of, can I do this?
Yes.
Knowing, well, I can do this. Now it gets down to, well, how well can I do it?
Yes.
And make sure that you could probably get more from the experience.
And what do you think you would, the second time round, try to notice more? What would you be looking out for?
Probably the landscape, and probably also to maybe tap into some more of the people who are there as
Yeah,
well
right.
from other countries.
Yeah.
And understand their stories.
Yes.
Yeah. There was one guy when I was in the triage, and he's come in and he's getting an ECG, and I said, mate, are you okay?
Yeah.
He's an English guy, and he said, I've got a pacemaker.
Right.
So I have to get it checked every time.
Yep.
And I said, oh, that's fair enough. And he said, what are you doing? He said, I'm actually a guide for a blind runner. So
Are
this
you
guy's
serious?
running with a pacemaker, and he's guiding someone who's blind across this race. I'm thinking, he's got it much tougher than me.
Yeah.
So at that point, you think, well,
That puts context.
Yeah,
for
immediately.
You. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned someone else who's 65 who
Yeah.
typically finishes in the top 20.
Yeah, it's amazing. You see some of these people, and Ralph Fiennes did it the same year, actually. You know,
The actor?
the Explorer.
Oh,
Remember that?
right, the Explorer.
Yeah, he did it, and
Yeah.
I saw him, and he wrote a book about it.
Yeah,
But
okay.
he did that, and he did it fairly tough.
Yeah.
But then again, man was in his late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So fair enough.
There's wonderful. I think the story of running is it's a very powerful story about human endurance and human challenge, and some people are able to put it beautifully into words and
Yeah.
tell that narrative. Like, is that something you feel like you are able to do? Like, you've explained it really well to me, but
Yeah.
is it an artistic expression for you as well?
Yeah, it is. I find it's my way of training and running is also my element of meditation. It's sort of my outlet.
Yes.
So if I need to solve a problem,
Yes.
I'll go for a run.
Right.
If things don't feel like they're going great, I'll go out and go for a run.
Yeah.
And just get away from it. And I think there's one quote I read: if you can't solve a problem in a 4-hour run, it's not meant to be solved.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I kind of take
And
that
there's
philosophy.
something magical about the 4-hour run.
Don't know. It's kind of benchmark for marathon. You know, the elites do it at two and a bit.
Yes.
But my time's kind of 3.5 to 4.
Yeah.
But and I find I've written whole business plans while I've
Right.
been running
Right.
and processed issues and
Yes.
just rolled through my thinking
Yes.
and been able to solve a whole lot of problems and come up with ideas.
Yes.
Because I've got no distractions.
Yes. And are you curious about the science of that, or you just kind of just accept that that's the way it is for you?
Yeah, I think it is. I hear a lot of people say that they can't run or whatever, and I think everyone can run. It's just a matter of, if you've got an injury or things like that to prevent you, but generally if we want to, we can.
Yeah.
We're designed for it.
Yeah.
If the whole book Born to Run sort of
Yeah.
outlines that theory. But for me, it's it's a whole lot of reasons why I do it. And it's kind of, I never was a runner, and I only sort of got into it because I had in my head, I have to run a marathon at least once.
Okay. So where does this story start? So given we've kind of gone smack bang into the middle, this key moment,
Yep.
now I'm kind of curious, how far back do we need to go back to? What's the origin story here?
I think it's probably 2 months. For running itself, I set myself a target that I was going to try to run a marathon by the time I was 40.
Okay.
That didn't happen, so I reset it and said I'll do it by the time I'm 45.
Yep. And how old are you now?
52.
52.
And
Great.
so I did that about...
And you did the event when you were 49?
Yeah.
Or-
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And so I decided I was going to run a marathon and decided I was going to do it for a reason.
Yes.
And I did a little fundraiser for Alzheimer's.
Yes.
And I did my first marathon, and I remember when I finished it, we were going on a family holiday, and I did the run, then hopped on a plane and went to Paris and met the family there.
Yep.
But I said to my wife on the phone, said, if I ever say I'm going to do anything so stupid again, no one should slap me. So that was the first marathon. So
Right.
things went out of control after
Yeah.
then.
Okay, so at that point, it was possible that could have been it.
Yep. absolutely. Yeah, at that point I was thinking, because my feet were swollen, my knees were swollen, I was sore.
Yes.
And that just came down to preparation and my condition. I hadn't done it before.
Yes.
But it wasn't long after that I thought, well, the time I ran I wasn't happy with, so I wanted to do another one.
Yep.
Get a faster time. So then I did another marathon and then another.
Right.
I thought, well, I can run a marathon. Maybe I could do an ultra marathon.
Yeah.
And then I saw, how far do I push this out? It's only my first ultra, and then it sort of went on. I thought, well, can I do a 100k run?
Yeah.
And then, well, what about a multi-stage? And at the point I was going through this exit period, I'd started to get focused on my health and well-being.
Yep.
And my mum had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Yes.
And I started to do a lot of research into what drives that, what causes it, what are the preventative actions that we can take, and
Right.
health, fitness were key elements.
So your mum's illness was a real trigger for this as well.
Yeah, it was kind of a wake-up call.
Right.
Look at my own lifestyle and how I was tracking, and I was probably 20 kilos heavier than I am today.
Yes.
And my lifestyle, I was living the executive lifestyle where I was on a plane every other week.
Yep.
Eating out a lot.
Yes.
And probably enjoying too much of the good life.
Yep.
And as a consequence, my health wasn't great.
Yep.
So that was getting that message through mum's illness, sort of motivated me to focus on my own training and health and well-being.
Yep.
And that sort of led it through. And then when she passed away, that was a tough moment. But for me, I thought, well, how do I can't do anything about that.
Yes.
I can't do anything, I can't solve the problem, but maybe I can raise awareness and I can raise funds for research.
Yeah.
So my whole focus was people shouldn't have to go through this. So that became the driver. And the Alzheimer's Australia were really supportive.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, look, I'm thinking about doing this. And they said, well, we'll get behind you. And they backed me in. I set up a charity, I created a website, created a blog, and created the campaign, and then kicked it off and started hustling around for donations.
Right. So there's a whole lot of layers to all of this, isn't there? There's the nature in you, and I'm thinking about when I met you. I sense you are a goal-driven person.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's been present for you.
Yeah.
In your life.
Absolutely.
And not only a goal-driven person, but the way you used to lead was very much enabling others to reach their full potential as well. Mm-hmm. Like that, you got a lot of satisfaction.
Yeah,
out of
it's
that.
one of my favourite elements, I guess, is that coaching and development.
Yeah, and if anything, you were probably working in large corporates that, probably at the surface level said they cared about learning, but you were one who actually really not only cared about it, but you actually lived it.
Yeah, absolutely. I still try to now. A lot of the guys that worked for me back then,
Yes.
and even jobs prior,
Yes.
I still have relationships with as mentor, advisor, or coach, or
Yes.
just a friend
Yes.
that
yes.
they can tap into.
So there's something, it's very strong in who you are and who you've been as a leader. Then there's this confronting moment of seeing your mum pass away from a debilitating illness. Maybe just a little bit about that, what you experienced through that time.
Yeah, it was probably an element of helplessness.
Right.
Because you can
Watching
someone that
else.
you care about and love who's starting to they change.
Yeah, okay.
The things they used to love and do they can't do anymore.
Yes.
Their memory's challenged.
Yep.
And but there's these moments where they're quite lucid and their old self comes back in.
Right.
And you get these elements and
does that even make it harder? Like just seeing the person,
the
real person's still there.
Yeah, I had one moment that hurt the most. I think I was sitting at the nursing home because eventually Mum couldn't stay at home.
Yep.
And I was sitting down with her and we're having a chat. And I just said, "Oh, you look a bit miserable." She said, "Well, it's a miserable life I've got, isn't it?" And it was like this bang, this moment of lucid, and she knew exactly where she was and why she was there.
Right.
And she was miserable.
Right. Right.
And there's nothing I can do about it.
Right. To be honest, I picture an imagery of my own mum who passed away of bowel cancer.
Yep.
And it was my moment like that was when she said, "Colin, I'm scared."
Yep.
And I can still, in fact, I get chills through my body when I say that to myself. It's that moment of seeing someone who's always been looking out for you suffering.
Yeah. And there's nothing you can do.
Nothing you can do. Yeah.
So and that was probably that hurt the most.
Yeah.
That period, and then having to get in the car and drive back to Melbourne.
Right. Right. So she was in country
Yeah,
Victoria.
in Benalla where I grew up.
Right.
And so yeah, that was hard.
Yes.
And then when I sort
And
of
then you decided to do something about it.
yeah.
You couldn't control that, but you could
Yep.
take some control over other things.
Absolutely. And that's what I thought, how do I raise awareness, get people familiar with what's going on, because I didn't feel it was getting the attention that it deserved.
Yep.
And also, too, raising a little bit of money was also going to be helpful.
Yes.
For Alzheimer's Victoria.
Yep.
So that became the whole focus, and that became the driver behind the campaign.
Yep.
And that sort of gave me this adventure with the cause concept, that this is what I'm doing. And it also...
So that's the phrasing you use?
Yeah, it was kind of for me. That was the point.
A venture with a cause.
Yeah. So I tapped into Keith, who you remember?
Yes.
You probably remember.
Yep.
And Keith was happy to help out, so he did the design for me. We came up with the name, the Memory Jogger. And
Can you emphasise that again? Because I love it.
Yeah,
The memory jogger.
Yeah, and that was a campaign. So it was the Memory Jogger.
That's so
both of
clever.
it, and it tied in, and Keith did all the artwork. My son developed the website. And then it kicked off, and I started to share my experiences, what I was going through, and my plans for kicking off that campaign. And I already had, at that point, I was running a global audience measurement business.
Yes.
And so I had to tell the VCs and the board, when I signed up, I said, I need to tell you that I'm doing this as well.
Yes.
And
And
they
their
went,
reaction?
That was, are you insane, first of all? Have we got insurance on him?
Right.
There's a few of those questions. And I said, no, that'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were supportive, and it was a great experience.
Right.
Yeah, that whole exercise, and I got to meet a lot of people at Alzheimer's, and I've done a bit of work with them since, and a few interviews and things like that, just to try to reinforce the power of healthy living and how it can help prevent dementia.
So there is there's an episode that features you and is about the science behind Alzheimer's, which is on the Catalyst program.
Yeah.
And we can definitely put at least a YouTube link to that.
Yeah.
What particularly for those people listening, what do we now know about that disease and the role you can play in controlling it in terms of
I think
diet, health?
Diet and health are probably key.
Yes.
And I think the other part is, the one thing is that there is no cure. So that's the first to accept. So the best thing you can do, if there's no cure, is how do I prevent?
Yes.
And there's elements of things from both on the psychology side, and I think of doing new things all the time.
Right.
Is actually good for, like, what I call mental gymnastics.
Yes.
So, and fortunately, being the type of role I do now, I get to actually look at different problems, different things.
Yep.
Trying to be really engaged in doing a lot of reading.
Yep.
On the health side, though, it's really getting focused on your diet.
Yes.
Since then I've probably dropped. I haven't had meat for 3 years. I have fish.
Yes.
As my sole protein.
Yes.
But primarily it's a vegetarian type diet.
Yeah. And you actually look fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm 20 kilos lighter than I was.
Yeah. In fact, there's an image on the Catalyst program, and I'm quite struck by it. Like you are a lot bigger than I can even recall. Like, and to see you now, like it's it's phenomenal. Like
it's a big difference, and I feel so much better for it.
Yes.
And I think it's as I started to lose weight and I started to get healthier.
Yeah.
I felt better.
Yep.
And I was capable of doing more things.
Yes.
Those little niggles and pains that I used to get.
Yes.
Didn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
So that became self-affirming in its own way.
Yeah.
But I was really sort of dropping out a lot of the junk
Okay.
out of the diet.
Yep.
That was the main thing, and then getting that nice balance, but a Mediterranean type diet where lots of greens, lots of good oils.
Yes.
Avoiding the bad oils as much as possible.
Yep.
And getting that balance right around alcohol intake. I look at everything and say it's balance.
Yeah.
So you don't want to live like a monk, but you need to get a nice balance that you've got a healthy lifestyle, but you're going to break the shackles every now and again.
Yep.
Just don't do it all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a slightly unfair question, but when you were running, particularly the Sahara piece, memories of your mum or recollection of why you were doing it, like how much of a role did that actually play?
I had a lot, I think, and it was when I got the messages on the email, that was the reinforcement that there were people watching and still following.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, you don't know.
No, you don't.
You're out of the you've got no idea.
No one's noticed.
No, so you could be just out there tearing it away and no one's got any idea. But getting the messages kind of reaffirmed it.
Right.
Probably the biggest moment was at the starting line. And that's when I sort of stopped and thought, what would Mum think now?
Yeah, wow.
And it was kind of, and I don't know, she would have thought you were a lunatic. That's what she would have said.
Yes. That's great.
She said, what the hell are you doing? And I think my father said the same time, "No, don't people die in this race?" I'm going, well, only 2. So that's not a bad hit rate when you think about it.
Yeah. For what you're actually, how far you're pushing the human body.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, love that no one's passed away doing it, but I've seen a couple of clips of it, and your story around it just still blows me away. What the human body is capable of.
That's one thing I think I found was you underestimate the power of your mind and your body, and how far you can push it. Because we often set ourselves our own barriers. But when you start to stretch it, you start to realise that those boundaries are a lot further away than you really think. And I think that's true in most cases, but it's only by setting that goal. You said before, my goal driven. If I hadn't set the goal, I wouldn't have done the training. If I hadn't signed up. So I kind of sign up for my next event pretty much as soon as I finish the last event.
Right.
Because then I don't have an option to get lazy or to get slack and not do the work. Keeps me focused. And I have something that channels my energy towards it.
And what's the next one?
I'm doing a marathon in Croatia in September.
Croatia,
a little place called Ston. It's a walled city, so I'm doing a marathon around there, and then I've got another one to do in October. But I'm looking at a bigger one in Greenland next year as a potential, which is.
So you get to travel the world doing this.
Well, that's what I think. If you're going to do it, you might as well make sure you go somewhere decent. And so now I've used it,
and that matters in this, like the life experience as well.
Oh yeah, and I think if I did one through Scotland where. I was running through the Western Highlands. So I saw parts of Scotland that some Scottish people never get to see. And you're out in the complete remote, miles away from anything. And same as in the Sahara, I'm thinking, how many people actually get to do this? There's not many. So you have to sort of reflect and say, I'm pretty lucky to be have the opportunity to do it. And so that becomes a big part of it. So I've done a few interesting ones, Great Wall of China and ones across in New Zealand and different places.
And Graham Plant, you remain quite understated. When you say a few interesting places, like they're just, they're bucket list destinations for people, let alone going to those places and actually pushing your own physical and mental limits.
Well, it's fun though, I think, is when you actually get out to those places, you see things from a different perspective when you're doing it on foot. And running. And
what do you mean by that?
Say the Great Wall of China, for example, you're running through little villages as well. There's all these little kids coming out and high-fiving as you run past.
Fantastic.
And in the Sahara, like there's these really weird things. We're running along through the sands and we'll see these kids on bikes. Hey, what the hell are you doing here? So, but there's a little village nearby. They're going on those little mini bikes or something, and you're going through old ruins, Roman ruins. And so these things
you wouldn't have expected.
No, things you wouldn't expect to see, and so people would come out.
Things you'll miss on a bus tour or on a.
Okay. And miles away from everything. And I quite like that. As much as running by yourself can be challenging, the solitude's quite good as well. It's nice to be comfortable with your own thoughts.
So take us to today. So, in a funny way, again, I remind myself of when I first met you, and I always rated you as just an outstanding leader, prepared to do a lot of things, prepared to invest in their people, prepared to focus on goals. And you and I would also recall moments where you're prepared to kind of call it and challenge individuals and challenge your team. So you didn't shy away from that stuff.
No.
You were prepared to have tough conversations with your peers and even your bosses, which didn't always serve you well.
No, probably not.
So I'm picturing the person I knew at the time, which and that person I absolutely admired. What's the person I see today, especially in terms of the leader you are today?
I'm probably. I think through this whole exercise, I've become a little. I don't let things probably get to me as much. And I think you mentioned that before. I think I threw you into a bad situation once where I told the whole team they weren't behaving appropriately as a leadership team, and said that if they didn't like it, they could resign and it would all be good. And if you wanted to stay, that was fine. And then when they said yes, I said, all right, Colin, go and fix them up. So that was one scenario. But for me, it was I don't look at any challenge or problem is it's not solvable.
Okay.
So there's an element of
Definitely solvable within 4 hours on a run.
everything's.
Yeah.
I think it was when you're looking at what I learned from the run is there was periods of times where I didn't see an answer,
Yes.
but there was,
Yeah.
and just a matter of time and focus and training, and you do find ways to do things. So I probably gathered a lot more self-belief
Right.
and comfort in myself and levels of resilience,
Yes.
but also too, problems at work didn't seem that big.
Perspective.
Yeah, because I see people like with my mother going through that process and what
Yep.
people working through, then the guy with the pacemaker leading someone who's blind through the desert.
Yes.
Then people are getting stressed about a work problem. I'm going, it's not that big.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not that big a deal. This is solvable. We have all the tools and resources available to solve this.
So am I looking at the Zen version of you
Yeah, it
now?
might be a bit more relaxed. I don't tend to get as agitated, or I don't get as stressed. Most certainly about situations. Whereas I think in that corporate environment where you work in a highly political space,
Yeah.
and there tends to be a lot of self-serving
Yes.
in that space about getting that promotion
And ego and
those things.
Yeah.
And then you look at it and think those things really aren't important.
Yes.
And it's really focused as the outcome is the most important thing. And that becomes more my focus. How do I get to the outcome? Not worrying about the journey.
Yeah.
So I'm quite comfortable now setting a goal with no idea how I'm going to get there.
You're still ambitious though.
Yeah, to a degree.
Well, tell me about that, because I look at some of the, where you continue to invest your time and you're investing in, still a lot of mentoring, and you've got a couple of startup ideas, and so you're still very active in the commercial corporate space or the space of business. But when I said ambitious, you hesitated a bit.
Yeah, I don't think I aspire to be a CEO of a big corporation or anything like that. So I'm not looking
And at one point you possibly did?
Yeah, I probably thought that was the trajectory I wanted to get to.
Yes.
And then as time went by, I looked at probably, maybe unfairly, I picked on a few CEOs that I've worked for or around.
Yes.
And thought, I don't want to be like them.
Okay.
And if that's what the gig looks like, then
Be
it's
careful
not for
what
me.
you ask for.
Yeah, I don't want that gig. But then as time's gone by and I'm working as an advisor and a consultant with boards and organisations, I've met some really fantastic CEOs and compelling people. I thought, I can see why they're good for this type of role.
Okay.
And even now, what I did learn, I guess, probably with Mum passing away when she did, there's we don't really have a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, if I'm actually going to get involved in a startup, or I actually want to make a difference,
Yes.
I've got to make the time.
Yes.
So then you become a lot more judicious about, okay, what's really important and where shall I be focusing my energy?
Yeah.
Is this making me feel good about things?
Yep.
Is it delivering some value?
Yep.
And I think delivering value and benefit became more important than the income.
Yes.
So
Yes.
therefore...
And definitely the self-serving part.
Yeah.
Or the need to, to feed your own ego around,
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
I've got another promotion, or I've got a bigger salary package, or a bigger bonus.
Yeah, I think I look back and I'll be judgmental on myself, though. I think there is a period when you're in that executive ranks and you're part of the hustle and bustle of the corporate grind.
Yeah.
The brand of your car, the watch you wear, the postcode you live in, all become these elements of status which you judge your success by.
Yes.
But they aren't
Yeah.
relevant at all. It's really sitting back at the end of your career and saying, did I make a difference?
Yeah.
Is what really is important.
Yeah.
If you look back and say, you know what, I'm proud of what I've done and I've made a difference, then you've had a successful career. But if you say back, I've been a complete prick for the whole entire my career and people hate me and I've made a lot of money, but I don't have a lot of people I can call on as friends, I think you failed.
Now I know already you've made a difference. Like, in fact, even before the running and the social movement that was behind that and the personal challenge, like I felt like you were a person who'd made a difference, a massive difference. In fact, the fact that you and I can still picture, in fact, you very intimately, a group of people that were together working hard at a particular time, and you're still connected with them.
Yep.
And they've gone on to do a variety of amazing things. So you've already made a difference. Does it feel unfinished? Like, I'm sure at some level it does. There's more challenges. There's more difference to make.
I think to a degree, I think I've learnt more as I've evolved now. I guess I've seen myself. I still get involved heavily in a lot of strategy, what I really enjoy.
Yep.
I love that design element and
Yep.
building strategies and solutions.
Yes.
Leadership's still something that really inspires me.
Yes.
So I have this litany of books that I sort of tap into as my leadership inspiration.
Yes.
And even now, as I look back at the guys I'm working with, I find myself enjoying coaching more
Yes.
and helping people achieve their goals. I find more rewarding.
Yes.
Concurrently, though, they inspire me to push on my other startup ideas.
Okay.
And the startups I work with as an advisor, because I look at their inspiration and the way in which they're approaching things with such excitement.
Yeah.
Gives me the energy to go and actually push into the things that I should be doing.
Yeah.
That I'll get to it one day. We've all got those things. We'll say one day I'll do it,
Yeah.
and then 10 years time later they're still sitting there.
Yeah. Yeah. And for what it's worth, what I'm doing right now is one of those things for me. Like because we were out of contact for a little while, but a big dream for me was, in fact, even when I first met you, a big dream for me was to become someone like Andrew Denton. Mm-hmm. I could picture myself.
I can see that.
Yeah, and that plays out with so much of my professional life in that I would much rather conduct a sort of sit-down interview with an executive rather than do a keynote speaking event.
Yep.
Like that's still a definition of a nightmare for me. So this was an example of me that I just had to get out there and do it because another year could go by and another year could go by and then a decade's gone by.
Yeah.
So I see how important it is that story of not only doing it but then setting up that next goal almost before you've recovered from the first.
And be prepared to take the risk.
Okay.
I think it's a key part of it is, I think you've done that and successfully. Yeah. So I think that part of that process is, if you haven't got a goal, it's that whole, Lewis Carroll, Cheshire Cat.
Yeah.
When I asked the Cheshire Cat, what road should I take? And he says, where do you want to go? And she said, I don't know. Said, doesn't matter then.
Yeah.
It's that same process. If you don't have a goal, the path you take becomes irrelevant.
Yeah, that's right.
But if at least you know the outcome you want to get to, you'll make better decisions along that way.
Yes.
So all the work I do now with some of the people I'm working with, it's getting that vision of their future in a way in which they can describe it almost like a dream, or that sort of vision where they can describe where they're at, what they're doing, how successful they are, what are they doing, what's their business look like, how happy are they, what's their life like.
Yes.
And when they actually describe it, it becomes somewhat more real and something to focus on.
Yep.
And then that simple question says, well, that's where you want to get to. Other things you're doing today are going to get you there.
Yes.
And it's similar on the run, and I can tell you all the guys that did MBS, the investment they made in training, I know how much I put in, and some of these guys would have put in the same as me and more.
Yes.
It was a lifestyle. You didn't have a choice. Every weekend you were training, plus 3 or 4 times a week, and then we're all on eBay buying bucket loads of crap that we needed to actually do the race.
What's it cost you? Has it cost you anything? Because the choices we make always, there's upsides and downsides. Do you sense that all of that time, all of that effort, all that loneliness, all that pain?
No, I think I've actually seen all of it as rewarding.
Okay.
I think probably what I learned from the process now is there's always something to learn from everything that I do, and that I learned a lot about myself on that run, on that event, and I think that's helped me understand who I am and what drives me far better than I did before. I think I was driven by more artificial means before, but now it's more internal.
Right.
So I'm driven by what's important to me now than what's important to others.
Yeah, so the technical, it's around the intrinsic motivation rather than the extrinsic rewards.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that was the key part. And that ability to get out on trail runs and mix with people from different worlds, different countries, different cultures, and they're sharing their experience. And you think, here's this guy from a completely different country, and we're sitting out, we're running the same event, having conversations like we live next door to each other. Yeah. So it's kind of those real weird moments that you remember the most.
Have I missed anything in this story? Like, is there anything?
No, I think it's funny that with the race, I'd say anyone that wants to do it should do it. One of me was that one day I was thinking that it'd be good, I reckon, executives that actually could pull together and want to do a leadership thing, they should bandy up and do that together. Yeah. That would be kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, there's a startup idea for you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of those events where I looked at afterwards, and when I first signed up, I thought this is a bridge too far. Like it's 15 years ago, I would have said, there's no way in a million years I could do that.
Yes.
And then I did it.
Yeah.
So what I've sort of started to realise is that everything was doable if you're prepared to make the investment.
Yeah.
So everything now becomes down to, I know it's achievable, but only if I'm prepared to make the investment.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the key learning I took from it, that I think my wife, my sister, I think, was concerned about my welfare, and she said, he'll be fine. You haven't seen the amount of training he's done.
Okay.
So she, in her mind, she wasn't
Done
concerned.
the preparation.
She said, he's done all the training,
And
so therefore...
that's how you started this conversation with me. You said, at the starting line, I knew I'd done the work. Like, the battle was more than half won.
Yeah. It was one of my mates, John, he's done an Ironman. He said, that the hardest thing to get to is the starting line.
Yeah, wow.
The event itself will sort itself out.
Yeah.
But it's all the work you get to that start line is the hard work.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for this conversation. When we caught up just close to my home and we had a coffee, and it was delightful to see you. It had been too many years.
Yeah, it's been way too long.
And I remember you starting to tell me about this, and I was going, oh my goodness, I could see my head start to explode with questions and ideas. And then I thought, nah, I just want to do it in this format. So, and if anything, I'm feeling quite humbled by what you're telling me, like, and calmer.
Yeah.
Like, you are calmer. Like, you actually have this calmer, considered, not just outlook, but the way you present and the way. And I feel calm being with you as we're just talking this through.
Yeah, as I say, I feel like I'm a lot more comfortable with myself.
Yeah.
And I think when you do something like that, you don't feel like you have anything to prove.
Yeah.
So that's the important part. I think when you're in that corporate grind, sometimes you're always trying to prove yourself to somebody. Yeah. And really, the most important person is prove yourself, but look after everyone else along the way.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Is there anything you'd love people to check out?
No, I said I can give you the link to the blog that I wrote about. That was my sort of wrap up for the whole fundraising.
Which I think we definitely will, and I think it's anyone who's thinking not just doing this event, but anything way outside of your comfort zone. Yeah, I think it's so informative.
It's a good point, actually. I think that I've took out most of all is I'm now more comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to get to that point, but now being uncomfortable is not as frightening as maybe as it once was. But no, I think that's been really, I've enjoyed the chat. And as I said, I'm taking a lot of those learnings now into my business coaching and working with people and sort of passing on 30 years of that working in corporate. But now I've sort of pared back and I'm a bit more comfortable and relaxed than probably what I was when you were. I brought you in to actually work with me and the team. Yeah,
and then I thought you were reasonably chilled, but now it's a whole new level. So Graham Plant, the memory jogger, a wise person, someone that's actually helped me and inspired me. I learned as much from you as you did from me. So
it's been mutual.
Thank you for doing Leadership of Fools.
Pleasure.
And we'll keep talking.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks.